Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Our guest today is Ruchir Shah. Welcome to the show, Ruchir.
Hey, how's it going, Adrian? Yeah, great to be here.
Ruchir, just to say in introduction that you're the founder and CEO at Skillcat. Okay. Let's get you introduced to the audience. Please tell us a little bit about your background, and then how did you become a founder, and tell us your story.
Yeah, it's a great question. So my background, actually, so coming out of college, I went to school in Houston at Rice University, and coming out, I did policy research on the BP oil spill. And I realized one of the biggest issues that caused that spill was ineffective training and training problems. And so I built out a company right out of college, 21, building online courses and simulators to train oil and gas workers. And we grew that quite a bit. You know, we had thousands of people trained and worked with a lot of the largest oil and gas companies. Put that on hold for a bit, went to business school at Stanford, came out of school and went back to the business during COVID. And every single oil and gas worker was being laid off. And so you had all these amazing skilled trade workers who had been making, you know, 300-400K a year going to work at grocery stores because they had amazing mechanical skills, amazing electrical skills, but just didn't know where to go, what industries really could use their skills. You know, oil and gas wasn't existent anymore at the time. What other opportunities are there for people like them? And so that's when I decided to start Skillcat, was really building out a platform to help more people get into industries like HVAC, like plumbing, like electrical, like multifamily maintenance that have a huge shortage of technicians and just can't find enough people who really want to break into those industries. And so we built Skillcat out as a training and a jobs platform for folks who want to break into skilled trade jobs. And we've trained almost 100,000 people. And so these are people who have never worked in the trades, people who really want to work into the trades. A lot of folks who already work in multifamily and maintenance, who want to grow and expand and build their careers. And it's been really an incredible experience. And so, yeah, I'm just very fortunate. I think we live in a world now where as a skilled trade technician, you can no longer plan to work at the same company your whole life. And you can't even plan often to work in the same industry your whole life. A lot of industries are evolving, technology is changing job roles. And so Skillcat, we aspire to be at that center of that journey for technicians. How do we help you adapt and grow and build for the AI-enabled future?
So if you were to pinpoint, a number of few pain points that Skillcat is solving in a multifamily industry, what would those be?
Yeah, so I think in short, it's really the worker shortage, right? And so for those of you who don't know about this, there's a shortage of millions of workers across the skilled trades. So historically, people used to go to high school and then, very, very common to go to a trade school and get a skilled trade job. Work as an HVAC technician, as a plumber, as an electrician, great jobs. But over time, our society and our schools have started pushing everyone to college. And I think it's one of the biggest tragedies of our time that so many people who would be perfect fits for a maintenance job or a skilled trade job where they can make incredible money with zero debt, instead end up going to school for 4 years, have over 250K in debt, and then go on to make 40K a year in a salary. So there's a huge problem where fewer people are joining the trades and a lot of baby boomers are retiring. A lot of these trades, I think multifamily maintenance is one of the biggest ones. The average age of folks is, 60s plus. And when you have that, you have people retiring and just fewer people joining the trades. And so I think one of the biggest challenges in multifamily today, and it's often ignored, is there's a huge shortage of maintenance technicians. And because of that, jobs don't get done as efficiently. A lot of companies are forced to outsource a lot of their work orders and pay massive sums of money to external contractors. Residents are less happy because their work takes longer to get fixed. There's just a lot of challenges. And so at Skillcat, we have two different methods we've used to solve this huge problem, which is, hey, there's just not enough workers in the trades. Number one, we have a hiring platform and an apprenticeship program where companies can work with us to bring on technicians from our platform that are some of the best and brightest minds who really want to break into the industry. We get them trained up, assess and vet them, and then we get them placed out. And so we can help source and assess really great technicians. And then we also have training and tools that technicians can use to be more efficient and productive on the job. So with our training and our on-the-job troubleshooting tools, techs can become a lot faster at solving problems in the field. So really just doing what we can to bring more workers in, to help retain them more effectively, and then help make them more efficient and productive so they can do more with less.
So the number one controllable expense in multifamily is maintenance related expense, right? Part of the maintenance related expenses. How can technology help reduce those expenses?
Yeah, I think that's just that first insight you just mentioned there, the number one expense that's controllable is maintenance related. I wish more operations managers, chief operating officers, I wish they thought that way, because everyone thinks of maintenance as, oh, it's a cost center. You can't really do much about it. Let's focus on leasing. Let's focus on revenue. But it's ridiculous when you think about it, what a large percentage, like so many maintenance expenses can be cut through proper use of technology and training. So yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the same thing. Hiring maintenance techs is expensive. Retraining maintenance techs is expensive. If you can retain technicians better through technology that shows them a clear career path to growth, that saves money right there. That's number one. Number two, companies spend a tremendous amount of money outsourcing to HVAC, plumbing, and electrical contractors. And hey, we know, we work with HVAC contractors too. They are very expensive, and they're getting more expensive every day because they have a part shortage. They also have a worker shortage. And so anything your maintenance techs can't do in-house that they might be able to do is a wasted opportunity to save thousands and thousands of dollars. A lot of HVAC calls, like I've talked to maintenance companies, maintenance departments at multifamily organizations where they outsource filter changes. So they'll call an HVAC company to change filters on AC units at their apartments. And it's like, often HVAC companies, they'll charge $1,000 just to come out there. So for something as simple as a filter change that anyone should be able to do, they don't trust their maintenance technicians enough to do them because they haven't given them the training, they haven't empowered them, they haven't supported them to do that in-house. And so, I really think there's a lot more that every single multifamily company can do to bring those expenses in-house and save a lot of money. I wish more people, and I'm really glad this podcast exists, Adrian, and that you're talking to so many people, because more and more people need to understand that. It's just like, it's stupid. I mean, I went to business school. It's stupid to say, hey, we're just going to ignore this massive expense that's, upwards of 50% of our operating budgets at times, just because it doesn't seem like we can do anything about it. Because you really can, right? Saving, if you have $100, net operating income, making $20 more because you save $20 in maintenance costs is a lot easier than making $20 more by building an entire new apartment, or leasing more effectively.
So I'm glad you're mentioning, how do we get this through the CEO, the top operators, the executives' ears, right? And here's what I think it happens. What's the biggest challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Biggest challenge that you have to get the message through, right, and show how much value you're providing, by using technology and cutting costs is this: multifamily pricing has been on an upward trajectory for probably now it's over a decade. We're going on almost like 15 years or something like that.
I can relate to that as an apartment renter for many years.
I'm sure you can. So the prices have been going up, the value of real estate, especially multifamily. And what's happening is everybody that's in a top position has a very good business, right? They're purchasing apartment complexes, communities, and they're just making a lot of money for themselves, for their investors, for everybody. And there's no real incentive to like say, okay, why don't we just make more money? Like there's so much money to be made just by owning the asset and operating it at a decent capacity that they're not really interested. Like we're making enough money this way, right?
Yeah.
I think that now with a recession that it's been announced and announced and announced, when something is going to happen in a market and the market is gonna go down, is gonna readjust, when there be very hard times for operators, right? We haven't had hard times for operators since maybe like 2009. That's a 14-year run. That's a very long, in my opinion, right? Probably the longest in a history, because typically the cycles are more like 5 years. So we haven't had most of the people that are in the industry, they haven't even been around in 2000.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. So they don't know what it's like. Now, when the next one is gonna come around, probably will soon. I don't know what to predict. This is when best operators are gonna make the best of that buck.
Yeah.
And the best of the situation. And that's when I think they're going to be forced to look at maintenance beyond just an expense, right? They're gonna look at an opportunity for the business to do better, right? I don't think that up until we hit, some bottom, like we go down, you're gonna get a lot of interest from the operators that way.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, they're making enough money anyway. So why bother? Do you disagree with this?
No, absolutely. I think that's a great point, right? The organizations that are actually efficient and productive and think about this stuff in advance are going to thrive when the economy struggles, right? And so, yes, everyone will care a lot more about this in a year or two when the economy is suffering more and multifamily is no longer just up all the time. But it takes time to train people. It takes time to hire, to build that buffer. And I think the smartest companies are thinking ahead. They're realizing that this is coming and trying to start planning and preparing for it.
In your opinion, what are some key challenges faced by newcomers entering the apartment maintenance field? And how can, a training app, a training resource help them?
Yeah, so we see it again and again in multifamily is leasing training is an obsession. It's good. I mean, I'm sure leasing is a tough job because you have to sell, and sales is always tough. But you never, we've talked to so many companies and you talk to these really bright, regional property managers or L&D teams, where they're like, hey, yeah, we built out a tremendous number of courses focused on leasing. And I think that's really great. And leasing is challenging, but maintenance is really hard, right? And you're getting a lot of these entry-level people with no previous background working electrically or mechanically. You get a lot of people who, grow up in today's, millennials and below, who don't have that much experience working with their hands. So it's really tough. It's tough to come into a maintenance job, especially an entry-level maintenance job, without any training or guidance or oversight. And often in a lot of these units, you might be the only person working to handling your apartment community. So you don't even have an easy supervisor or like service manager to watch over you and constantly ask questions. So it's really tough. I think like I can't imagine, there are very few other jobs outside of multifamily maintenance where it's considered okay to just throw someone in to a pretty challenging job with no training. So I think having training and having tools and resources where you can easily get help and support is critical. It's essential for technicians to feel empowered and actually happy and growing, to improve retention, and also to make residents actually happier. So because they actually have technicians who know what they're doing. So I think it's absolutely critical.
You said earlier that, there's difficult to get the message, all the way up to the top, right? So I'm going to ask you a point of question right now. Do you see any value in companies, like yours, or any tech company, partnering with industry influencers, people that already have an established brand, to help them spread the word, to do a marketing campaign, to create awareness of the value of the services that they're offering? Do you see any type of value in that type of partnership, like increasing your brand or a company brand's visibility?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a pretty insular industry, multifamily, right? Like you come in as an outsider, you can go to NA, you can go to these conferences, but everyone's like, who are you? Like, why have I never heard of you before? And a lot of the decisions, so coming into multifamily, we had already worked, with thousands and thousands of maintenance technicians on our platform. So every major company, whether it's, every major company has had technicians on our platform. But getting from that technician level all the way up and up and up to an operations level is challenging. And a lot of operations folks hadn't heard about us. And so for us, influencers have been tremendous. And, I'd like to point out that Adrian, you've been incredible, just helping push a message and sharing just about this big problem in the trades. And so I think influencers can be really tremendous in supporting and guiding companies into the industry, because it's not just lending credibility and brand, it's also just understanding the industry better, because it's such a mystery for someone coming in who doesn't understand how it works.
You're absolutely right. And something that I'm seeing typically at the tech companies, right? They're hiring two types of people, like people that could write code, so they could build a product, and people that could sell the product. But then that end user experience, it's not part of this, the part of the business. And when you think about it, yeah, it's important to get the message up to the top. But in order for this experience to be a very successful one and long-lived, you have to have a high, a decent adoption rate at the end user level. The person that's using the app, you might make a sell and say, hey, we sold this to 50,000 units. This is an amazing sell, because it is. And if you're turning around and hand this to the end user and they're not using it, or they use it and they hate it, not going to be successful long term, because sooner than later the company, your client, is going to realize, hey, wait a second, like we invested all this money into the app, it's not really giving us any results. Like, people are hating to use it. So I think that just including any tech company that's out there that's building tech for maintenance, right? They should be including people that could articulate what the issues are, what's working, what's not working, for real life feedback. So then the product could be built around that end user experience, not just like how we think it should work. Do you disagree with this?
No, absolutely. I think that's where we've been able to shine, even though we're still early in multifamily. Before we ever started charging for our app, and before we ever started working with companies, we trained over 100,000 people, right? Individual technicians who wanted to learn more and break into the industry. And so that experience, I mean, once you've dealt with, 20 angry individual users who are at home trying to make an app work, and like they're in their 60s and they're struggling, you can deal with anything, and you build all of that that into the app and into the ecosystem. So there's been a lot of long nights of dealing with support issues that have led to our app being so easy to use.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, next question is, let's say from adoption rates,
Mhm.
we just talked about, to improve work efficiencies, right? How important are KPIs in measuring the effectiveness of tech solutions?
Yeah, I mean, extremely important, right? So I think you see a lot of times people bring on solutions like training or in the field tools, and they sit on a shelf, you know? It's like they just, the company buys them, they pay for them, like, oh, it's a resource. Nobody really knows if anyone's using it. Nobody really cares. It's like, oh, this is another resource for them. Okay, but how does that help anyone, right? So unless people are actually using it, it has no value at all. And so I think KPIs matter a lot, right? And KPIs for usage and also KPIs for success, right? So before we implemented this solution, we would outsource X percentage of HVAC work orders. Now we outsource, 10% less. And we've had those results from some of our customers. It's necessary. I mean, how do you believe someone unless you actually see evidence that that's the case, especially in your organization? So I think it's almost like if you're not using our product, you shouldn't be our customer, right? You're not the right customer. Either, you're not the right customer, or we need to really, really improve our product. And so we try to do everything month to month with our solution, and never even annual pricing, just so that if you're not happy, you leave, and that we learn something and we can improve our product accordingly.
So how long, in your opinion, does a company needs to have to use an app, a program, in order to be able to extract enough data points to tell a story of effectiveness or the lack of effectiveness, right?
Yeah.
So how lengthy should that time frame be? Is it like 3 months? Is it 5 years? Like how long is it enough to build enough data points to tell the story and to measure this efficiency of a tech product, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. My feeling is you should always be testing, right? So it's kind of like and I think a good parallel to this is hiring, because we spend a lot of time on the hiring side. If you're hiring someone new to your organization, first, before we hire them, we give them a work sample. So they go through and they spend a couple hours and we see, hey, are you good enough to pass this work sample? Then their first week on the job, we give them some more tasks that are a little bit more complicated. And hey, are you good enough to do this? Then a couple months later, we give you something more complicated. Are you good enough to do this? So I think it's a process of gradually testing out hypotheses to see if something works well enough. And so on the software perspective, I think there are some KPIs that you can test out before you even buy a product. There's some things you can test out in the first month, and some things might take 90 to 60 or even a year. So it varies, but you should always be testing incrementally as you grow. And so, for example, for our product, usually a lot of companies start with a pilot where it's 30 days and you get an opportunity during that time to test out, are people actually using it? Are people engaged? Are people enjoying it? Are they interactive? And then 3 months later or 6 months later, you can see, hey, they're using it. Does it actually have an impact on work orders or on retention? And retention might take a year to test. So I think each one of these things takes different levels of time. You start with the KPIs. I think you would test as much as you can test as quickly as possible and then go from there.
Ruchir, what are some effective ways to successfully roll out new technology in, let's say, mid-sized companies, like maybe 20, 30,000 units?
Yeah, so I think pilots work really well. So as much as possible, start with a smaller group. Don't start with everyone. Start with some of your most engaged technicians, your most engaged managers, get them going, and then grow from there. So pilots, I think, have worked pretty consistently for tech companies across industries. And it seems like multifamily is very much built for that because you're already distributed across different regions and different buildings. And so our experience so far has been pilots are the way to go.
You're speaking my language here.
I love it. You guys do a lot of pilots? Or you worked with a lot of pilots?
I am a proponent. I am a big fan of doing pilots.
Very cool.
Because I've seen it done the other way around, and it's extremely messy, right?
Yeah.
It's extremely painful. And I think that no company should go through a painful process of implementing technology. Take your best operators that will be, your end users, and test it on those operators. They even got to give you feedback and tell you what they like, what they don't like about the technology. You could go back to the manufacturer, to the company that produced that tech, and say, hey, we have these concerns. They could hopefully address them for you, make the product better before you roll it out in mass to everybody else.
It's frustrating how you just described it. If something gets rolled out without a pilot, it can be frustrating for the multifamily company, but it's also super frustrating for the tech company because yes, you may get more money up front and you may have this great sale, but then that company will eventually churn when they're unhappy and don't like your product. They won't use it as much. They won't have as good of an experience. And so across the board, I think pilots work super well to really validate on both sides how to make this a successful partnership.
I think they're the way to go, really, because once you get that adoption rate into the top users, they could also become like ambassadors for you and actually make the case for you and say, hey, we really enjoy using this. And in all honesty, if the top performers are gonna take a tech product and hate it, what's the whole point to sell to the whole company for it to turn into a mess and also damage your reputation? Because honestly, we're a very large industry, but we're a very small world to where everybody knows everybody. And the last thing that you want to hear about your product is that people talk about that your product sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you envision the future of training and skill development in property maintenance, Ruchir?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, these industries are changing, right? So like if you look 30, 40 years ago, you could work in the same industry or same company your entire life. And for the most part, you wouldn't need to adapt that much, right? There might be some new products here and there you need to learn, maybe some new appliances, maybe, some advancements, that you need to figure out. But for the most part, you learn once when you first finish school, maybe through an apprenticeship, and then you don't need to do that much ongoing learning for the rest of your career. I would say we're in a very, very different world now where because of electrification, so I guess 2 or 3 big trends. One is electrification. The other is AI and automation. And then the third is this worker shortage. And so electrification, you're seeing more and more appliances and really everything. I've heard of like a lot of plumbing also going electrical. Everything's going electrical. Control systems are being incorporated everywhere. And so you now have more and more units coming out, every few months with new models, and they're all more and more electrified. And so unless you consistently learn, you're going to fall behind. You can't be in a complacent mindset where you don't keep learning and growing. And then at the same time, automation and, the advent of generative AI and a lot of movements in the AI and automation space, a lot of these jobs are going to change considerably. The maintenance technician of today is going to be different from the technician of 5 years, and different from the technician of 10 years, because the jobs will still exist, but you're going to be using software more. You're going to be leveraging a lot of tools a lot more. I think in the future, training is not going to be something you just do once and then never do again, or you do once in a while and then that's it, or you do to just make your manager happy. It's something that technicians need to start doing consistently. Make it part of your routine every week, every month, to constantly go through and learn and stay up to date on what's going on. And that's where I think technology, like an app or, a learning system can be really useful, because they make it easy and, straightforward to continuously, constantly learn. I mean, nothing replaces hands-on training, and nothing replaces, actually getting experience on the job. But when you're really strapped for time, when teams don't have enough resources, you need to look to technology to be rapidly learning and growing on a constant basis. So continuous learning is something that can be enabled through technology.
Ruchir, you mentioned AI, right? And everybody's talking AI nowadays, right? There's concerns, whether valid or not, that AI is taking over the world and the jobs are disappearing because of AI. So what's your opinion on AI? Like, is it like eliminating jobs, and are people going to be, left in the streets because of the AI, or is the opposite, or it's a combination of in between?
No, I think it's the opposite. It's interesting, right? If you look at technology, every time there's a new technological development that's like big, everyone's terrified about their jobs going away, right? It happened when computers came out. It happened when the car came out. It happened, when the internet started booming. But what you see time and time again is jobs do not disappear. They just change, right? And I think this is when we started Skillcat. We looked at a lot of the data. Typically, in the US, the average income of non-college educated men, which has historically been skilled trade workers, went down significantly from the 80s to today. And so someone could look at that and be like, hey, wow, all the jobs are disappearing that are like good skilled trade jobs. But that's not true. For every job that disappeared in manufacturing that was just pure manual labor, it got replaced with a job that was a little bit more skilled in manufacturing that requires more knowledge of controls and of software. So I would say jobs are going to evolve. They're going to require new skills and new insights, and are probably going to be more interesting, frankly. I think there'll be more and more, a lot of the most boring, most repetitive aspects of being a technician may get eliminated, but there'll be more unique, more thoughtful, more interesting jobs that emerge as a result of AI automating those components. So no, I would say the companies should, technicians and companies should embrace AI. And it's kind of like, you don't really have a choice. It's coming anyways, whether you embrace it or not. And if you embrace it, you have an opportunity to really evolve your job and evolve your role for these new roles of the future.
I think the human race has this peculiarity, right? We see this in a history repeating. And, you mentioned when the car was invented. I go back to the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
The steam engines and all of that. And, this scare keeps coming back. But, we're not really taking the time to read history, to understand it, and then to just be good with, change is going to happen. Like we always want the latest iPhone, right? We want the latest iPhone. We want the latest everything.
Yeah.
But we don't want to become the latest version of ourselves.
Yeah.
Or we want for the latest version of ourselves to be ourselves 20 years ago, back when I was in high school. For me, it's a little more than 20 years. But we just don't, it's no, it's not possible. I'm 40 pounds heavier, I'm old, like I'm getting old. I can't stop that, I can't stop that. That's just the nature of things, and the way the nature works. Well, why should we expect things to stagnate when it comes to jobs and technology and evolution?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think I think it's exciting. I think like everyone gets scared thinking about how their jobs might go away, but there's new jobs that emerge and have emerged at every single technological shift. And so I'm not worried.
In terms of knowledge and expertise, what gaps do you believe exist in a current apartment maintenance training landscape?
It's interesting. I mean, it varies a lot. So we sometimes come across companies that have built really exceptional programs where they systematically teach people and grow them and train them. But often, I mean, there's companies that do nothing. And I think you posted something on LinkedIn about this, where companies are like, oh, we got someone, their EPA, and that's it. They're trained. They're a trained maintenance tech. And this is not how it works. I mean, we offer EPA certification through our app, and we have, a lot of people take it, but that doesn't teach you how to be a maintenance tech. That keeps you certified so that you can work with refrigerant, but the actual on-the-job skills, it doesn't teach you any of those. Even for an HVAC tech, it doesn't teach you any of the on-the-job skills. So I think the actual tactical training that you can use to do well at your job, like each work order, one by one. Like we've gone through a bunch of companies we've worked with and ranked all of their work orders based on their frequency. So what work orders happen the most often? Which ones do people struggle with the most? And I think real good training is applied and says, hey, these are some concepts you can learn, but then here are the work orders you're going to see. Here are the issues and the most common ways you can troubleshoot each one of these issues. And here's how you solve each issue. Learn it and then do it, and then learn it and then do it. And so just tactical applied learning where you actually, I mean, there's a preponderance of safety training. So we've seen a lot of companies, especially L&D teams, will say, yeah, we really care about safety for our technicians, which is really great. But I think where we see the biggest gap is actual on-the-job tactical training that can stop you from needing to call in external experts all the time.
Could you discuss any innovative teaching methods or approaches you think that could revolutionize how technical skills are taught?
So I think one thing that we try to do a lot in our courses is make everything, use a lot of multimedia. And so animations and simulations. And so animations would be, there's a lot of concepts, especially when you're troubleshooting, that are really hard to visualize because they're happening in the background. Like a lot of electrical stuff is happening in the background. You can't see it, right? You don't know what's happening. So animations that actually create a 3D representation that shows current and things moving in the background really help people understand and visualize a lot of these concepts better. And then simulations, really gamified, games in a sense, where you go in and you have to solve problems and challenges as if you're playing a video game. And you get a lot more practice than you would in real life because you can go again and again and again and see different issues. And we found that really useful both on the technical side, but also on the customer service side, where with simulations where you actually interact with customers and have to deal with some of the different challenges, that residents would face. And those are two things. I think the third thing that we found really interesting is tools and what we kind of call real-time training or guidance. So you always have your technicians, your rock stars who'll go through training religiously, day in, day out, like go through, read everything, read manuals back to back. But then you have a lot of technicians, and I think that number is increasing as we have to really hire a lot more people who just aren't that good at learning. They don't like going through training. They don't like going through, they don't like school. One of the reasons they became trade technicians, they didn't like school that much. And there are technicians like that. And so I think what we've kind of launched and what we've seen some other pretty neat companies in the industry launch is tools for techs to use on the job. Like when they actually go out to a work order, hey, watch this quick video, 1 minute long, 2 minutes long, to refresh your memory of how to fix this. Here's a step-by-step chart, a troubleshooting flow that you walk through, like, look at this picture, compare it to what you see, and like, does it look the same? Does it look different? And then use that to make a decision when you're troubleshooting. So making it a lot easier for techs to learn real time when they actually need it in the field. And so I think everyone just won't train, and you need that to make that successful. So I think animations, simulations, and then kind of in the field guidance training are the three big areas that I see revolutionizing training.
How do you foresee the integration of digital tools impacting the overall quality of maintenance services in apartment industry?
I think it'll help a lot. Yeah, I mean that's what we're all about. It'll have a tremendous impact. It'll save organizations money, make everybody happier, and just lead to a much more positive win-win-win for everyone involved in a multifamily organization.
So I'm gonna share some personal experience, right? I hire people that are right out of school. They actually want to study HVAC. They went to an HVAC technical college, 6 months or a year, graduated.
Yeah.
They came into the field, we hired them, and they know nothing. When it comes to real life knowledge, they know nothing. So you have the book knowledge right here. They spend quite a bit. Probably they did some lab work too. For sure they did. And then you have the real world in which you are expected to solve people problems, like to make an AC work, right? Or an appliance, or an electrical circuit or a component, right? And you have technology that's sitting right here in between. So explain to me how does technology bridge that gap between book knowledge, theoretical knowledge, and hands-on knowledge? Enough hands-on knowledge to give the person the ability to actually execute successfully.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think for us, right, I think from the beginning, there's been some skepticism about online training, right? It's like, what can you really do and learn online? And so I think there's kind of 3 routes we've taken to address that concern and get people real applied hands-on experience. So number 1, I've mentioned simulations. They're not the same, right, as actually getting hands-on experience. But the more you have to think and actually do yourself instead of just watching, the more interactive you're forced to be, the closer it gets to hands-on experience. And you feel a lot more comfortable and confident when you get out in the field that you actually know what everything is and what the process is to do something. So compared to traditional classroom learning, I think simulations go a long way. Number 2, how our app is designed is when you start your first year on the job, you get a career path that your company assigns you in the app. And it includes badges that you can earn that are, skill badges through going through our training, but it also includes badges you can only earn in the field. So when you go in the field, let's say it's, your first time changing a light bulb, very simple example, or your first time changing an AC filter. You take a picture, video, or audio clip of that task and you upload it. And then your manager can go in and validate that you have that skill. So it's kind of a way to gamify, using technology, gamify the process of gaining on-the-job skills. It's like, hey, I'm a technician level 1. I just started. For me to get to a technician level 2, I need to have actually gone in the field and done these 15 different tasks that a maintenance technician needs to do. And I should be able to do on my own independently. And they actually go out and do those, take those pictures, take those videos, build that portfolio. So it empowers them and shows, and it makes you feel like you're actually growing. Because otherwise, it can often feel like drinking from a fire hose your first few months on the job, and people quit because it's really hard and they don't realize the progress that they're making towards their goal. So those sort of on-the-job activities in our app help empower and quantify the growth on-the-job training. And then number 3, I would say the tools. So if there's on the real-time guidance that can help you in the field, you can throw an inexperienced technician, even someone, on their first day on the job, into solving, an issue with an overflowing toilet. You can throw them in and give them our app and our tool, and they can do a pretty damn good job solving that just with that tool. And that empowers them, right? They might still have questions, but they'll have less questions, right? They might still get demoralized, but they'll be less demoralized. So it helps empower them real time in the field. So that's kind of how we've thought about it.
So it's enhancing that experience. It's not like altogether making someone a genius, right, overnight, just by carrying this app on their phone,
No,
but
no,
it's enhancing. It's a resource, right? It's a resource
exactly.
to make their work life easier, right?
Mhm. Exactly. A lot of that, I think, from what we've seen, and we've talked to a lot of companies that have terrible retention of maintenance techs. And what we've seen often, it's not because, people blame this on the techs. Oh, they don't like hard work. They don't like this. But I really think a lot of technicians are dealing with an environment where they don't have the same mentorship and guidance that, people who joined the industry 40 years ago had. They don't have the same luxury of taking time to train and like do things slowly, the way technicians 40 years ago had. There's a much bigger shortage right now. There are a lot fewer people in the industry. There's a lot less time. So it's tough, right? And so you need these tools to keep technicians happy and supported. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to learn. They just need the right tools to get there.
So, Ruchir, how do you think the demographic shift towards digital native generations impacts the adoption and effectiveness of technology-based training in maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, it helps a lot. So it's interesting. We get a lot of young people on our platform, of course. There's 100,000 people, a lot of young people. We also get a good number of old people. Old people struggle more. They call more with support issues and requests, but they still, a lot of them find mobile devices a lot easier than they find computers. So a lot of them are still very intuitive and understanding of technology. But yeah, obviously, as more and more millennials and Gen Z enter the maintenance world, they're technology first, right? They're not used to classroom training. Even in schools, people do a lot of their training online, right? High school, middle school. So they're used to doing everything digital. They're used to doing everything gamified, right? So I think one of the reasons we keep harping on simulations and like career paths and like gamification is our generation, and honestly, I'm 32, even the generation 10 years younger than me, right? We like learn through games and learn through technology, right? And have grown up with a lot more gamification than any other generation. And so the more you can make things intuitive, make people feel like they're growing, give people intermediate wins where you feel like you're winning every month or every week or every day when you accomplish something, instead of only every year or every 5 years when you get a raise, like some companies do. That's what helps keep people empowered. So I think, yeah, obviously just them being more exposed to technology is helpful. But I think that a risk there is that they want to see results. They want to see more recognition. They want to see all of that in a way that other generations did not care about as much.
Richard, a personal question right now from your experience. You are a founder of a company. I'd like for you to share with us a few things that you've learned from being a founder, from your experience as a founder, and then maybe a couple of pieces of advice for someone that would like to follow the same path as you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I worked for a year out of college in a job in finance, and after that I've been an entrepreneur pretty much forever. And it's not something that's always been intentional. I haven't always gotten the jobs I've wanted. I probably would have been fired from my first job, almost definitely, if I hadn't quit. It's not always a choice. I think it's really empowering, though. I think there's so much you can accomplish in this world, and you can go after your own passions in a way that you can't, often in other jobs. And so, advice, I would say, take risks. And, usually at any age, people feel like, oh, I have so much going on, I can't afford to take a risk right now. But I think you're always the youngest you're ever going to be. And so it's always the right time to take a risk. And so take risks and pursue your passions and your dreams, because you only have one life. And you can always go back to a job. If you want to start something, you've been passionate about starting something, it never hurts. And I think you should go for it. So that's one thing I would say. And then the other, I would just say, surround yourself with really great people. So at Skillcat, I've been really fortunate to have an exceptional team that's been with me since the very beginning. And if you have really great people around you, you can accomplish a million times more than you can accomplish alone. So entrepreneurship can be very lonely and very challenging, but if you have good people that you've surrounded yourself with, even the lows feel really great because you know you can bounce back and you're with the right people. So those are kind of two big things I've learned. But yeah, I mean, if anyone is actually thinking about an entrepreneurial journey, there's no time like the present. If you have a job and you want to start something on the side, go for it, right? There's always more time in the day. There's always weekends. Like when I was working my first job, I would go during my lunch break and cold call. And then I would spend the weekends calling and working on stuff. And that's how people get started. So you can always get started, even if you have a job, start working on something on the side. And then just reach out to people who you want advice or inspiration from. I'm happy to, I'll share my information with Adrian. And I mean, if anyone wants any, input on entrepreneurship, I'm happy to give some insights, but I would say just go and do it. It's a rewarding thing. And even if, I've had companies that have failed, even if you've started companies that fail, you learn so much in that process and you come out being better for anything you choose to do next. So I strongly recommend.
Ruchir, was a real pleasure to have you here today. We cover a lot, great conversation. I want in closing to give you the opportunity to say something that you wish you would have said and you didn't have the opportunity to say, or maybe just answer a question you wish I would have asked and I didn't.
So I think if anybody, I guess, yeah, maybe shameless plug for Skillcat. I think we're building something really exceptional that's gonna change the way maintenance is done across multifamily. And so if you're interested in being involved or supporting our mission in any way, please reach out to me and we'd love to talk. I'd love feedback, ideas, suggestions. We're just really, really excited about what we're building. And we are looking for supporters who want to join the ride. So yeah, thanks so much, Adrian. I really enjoyed it. This was so much fun. My first podcast. And I had a great time. You're a really great podcast host.
Well, I appreciate, right? You did mention reach out to, people reaching out to you that they could. So tell us about a few ways in which they could reach out to you. Like, how could they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can, my email is Ruchir, RUCHIR @skillcatapp.com. So you can send me an email there. You can also just go to the Skillcat website and send an email through the form there and it'll get to me. So eventually. So yeah, so those are definitely, I would share my cell phone number, but probably not the best idea on this channel. But if you want my cell phone number, Adrian will give it to you. So
Ruchir, was amazing having you on today. Thank you again very much for coming, be here with us today. Everybody, thank you for watching us, for taking an hour out of your busy day to watch us. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. I hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.
Have a great day.